Morning, everybody. It's Shay. It's Thursday. We are back to do another live stream. This morning is a pretty amazing morning for me, actually. A long-standing conflict resolved yesterday, so I'm in a super great mood. Really can't wait to get kind of cracking on what honestly amounts to the rest of my life, which is fantastic. In typical Canadian fashion, I must report on the weather, which is beautiful. The snow from last week has gone away. We're finally getting some sun again, so maybe we're not heading directly into winter in September, which would be super great. So, on to a new project this week. I did finish Joshua's map last week and sent it off to him. He was quite happy with it. I have it put away at the moment, otherwise I'd dig it out to show you guys. It just would take long and be noisy. So today's project is the map of Runda for Scribe the Bard on Twitter. This is going into a module that Scribe is developing for teaching children how to play D&D and kind of introducing them to role playing and getting through that and the problem solving and getting along that goes into that kind of thing. I'm super excited about this project. I love the idea of introducing more people to role playing. It was pretty pivotal for me as I was growing up to kind of make me feel empowered and give me different decision making metrics than what I'd previously had. And it stayed really critical with me as I've grown older in terms of figuring out identity related stuff. I first started understanding my queerness through the lens of role playing games, specifically one tied to the X-Men comic book franchise. That was a really big thing for me as a teenager. And I like the idea of other people having access to these kinds of tools to explore worlds that are not the world they currently live in for escapism purposes and just imaginative purposes, but also themselves. I think that every single character you play is a facet of you, and the more you know of yourself, the better off you are for all of life, really. So I'm expecting that we're going to finish off the pencil drawing because it's really close to being done today. And then from there, we're going to do a little bit of inking. And then I want to jump right into color with this. So I'm hoping that we can do a fair amount of work on this today. So I think let's get going. So what we're looking at for this is the Luminous Lake. And there's an island in the middle of the lake, which is the island of the Guardian. And then this is the town of Runda. There are some specific buildings in here. These are the farms of Runda down in the corner. There's a few more farms over here that I need to draw in. And then there's a cabin here for the druid. And then this is the fairy forest. So what I want to do is just finish sketching in the farms over here. And then I will move into the inking. And then once the inking is done, we'll be able to go ahead and work on the color. I'm planning on doing the color in Copic marker for this project. I think that'll be a better fit for the aesthetic of what we're looking for. And also the book that I'm working in is my sketchbook, and it just doesn't like watercolor as much as it prefers Copic in terms of the paper. So designing a farm, I just want to kind of indicate different gardens, and a good way to let the reader or viewer, I guess, know that they're gardens is give yourself rows. And then just indicate that there are little crops going on those rows. And the great thing about working at this distance is you really don't need to get into an exceptional amount of detail in order to illustrate your crops, for example. Little twigs that look like grass or grain will be just fine. At a distance, you just see a shape, right? You don't need to see a specific thing. So having those more as a reference for me to know where I want my crop lines to be when I go in to illustrate it with the pen later. So there was no game yesterday. I was in the city, about 2 hours from where I live, handling the resolution of this thing. It was a really worthwhile day. It was something I wasn't expecting at all. I thought that this thing wouldn't resolve for another few years, so caught me off guard completely. Today is just glowing in terms of unexpected awesome. And to top it off, we're going to go and see a dog tonight, and we may be bringing home a new puppy, which would be amazing. We lost our German Shepherd in the spring. He was old, unfortunately, and had some really severe spinal fusion going on, which was tough to watch. And so we've been kind of mourning his loss and dealing with that. And it's been harder for Dave because Dave had Loki long before I ever came on the scene. And so I was just kind of waiting until Dave was ready. We knew we were going to get another dog. Dave really is kind of incomplete as a person without a pet. We just didn't know when that was going to be. So Dave messaged me while I was dealing with these meetings yesterday and was like, hey, how do you feel about going and looking at this puppy? There's this puppy. He's a year old and he's sweet. And apparently he's really chill. And we should go look at him. And I was like, if you're ready, man, I'm ready. So we don't know what his name is, but we know that he's a boy and he's a German Shepherd. And he's Loki was also a shepherd, but Loki was kind of your traditional black and tan with the dark markings, but largely like the tan face. This one is like almost all black except for his feet, which he's got these beautiful little tan socks. So I'm really hopeful that we are coming home with a dog tonight. I totally am not prepared in terms of like my house is a mess and we would need to go get dog food and all of this stuff, but it would be so nice to have a pet in the house again. I think it would be just fantastic. So I'm hoping that that's a thing that we get to do. It would be great. It has been a little bit nice to be able to travel without needing to worry too much about do we have someone to watch the dog and what have you, but I'm not sure that the convenience of that makes up for the house feeling so empty, if that makes any sense. So we will see how that goes. And hopefully next week I will be able to let you know. The next couple weeks I'm going to be doing my live stream from a couple different locations. A friend of mine is having surgery and needs a hand, so I'm going to be going and staying with them to make sure that they have what they need. So I'll be broadcasting from their kitchen table, which will be fun. That's the one thing about like, if we get this puppy tonight, like I might miss out on the first 2 weeks of the puppy being at home, and I'm just like, oh my god, I want the puppy. Thank you, Alette. I appreciate your good wishes. I might even have a picture of him. Where's my phone? Oh, I'm using my phone to broadcast. I'm sorry, that's not going to work. But I promise that if he comes home with me, I will have pictures for next week because he's just so cute. But yeah, 2 weeks away potentially here. I'm going in to help take care of a friend, and I'll be in the city for 2 weeks. And part of that will be I'm going to be doing the Etsy show in Edmonton. I'm going with Well Inked Box, which is one of the sponsors of my Patreon. They are a subscription box service for creative supplies, and that's like one of the coolest things ever for me. They keep me in all kinds of pens that I've never heard of. I've discovered some major favorites with their services. Really cool notebooks and pieces of paper, and probably the coolest bow clip I've ever seen. I don't know if most people get excited about bow clips the way I get excited about bow clips, but that one was amazing. I'm just looking around my desk here to see if I've got it handy. Yes, I do. I mean, it's understated, but check that out. Isn't that cool? It just looks kind of vintage and amazing. I'm a fan. Anyway, Well Inked Box. I love it. It's quarterly, so every couple of months you just get a box that magically shows up at your door. And they've always got a theme, and you can use whatever's going on in it and share your work on their Instagram and on their Twitter and stuff like that. It's a really neat community. I appreciate that everybody there is so supportive and just creative, and I've met some really cool people. I'm doing a tea exchange actually with one of their subscribers from Germany. And that's a thing, like, how cool is that? We are so connected through the internet now. It's just amazing. So yeah, doing the Etsy show with them, that's going to be the weekend of the 28th, I think. So if you are in Edmonton and you want to come hang out, it's at the Shaw Conference Center. We are there all day on the Saturday, and we are there, I think it's 11 to 4 on the Sunday. I will have some stickers because I got my stickers made finally, which show my little monocled octopus logo for the channel. In the original drawing, the scan is beautiful, the color came out perfectly, and they're die cut, so they will show up wonderfully on whatever you stick them on. So come say hi, grab a sticker from me. I'll be demoing some of the products that are going to be in the latest box. And it's probably going to be on a map so people can kind of see what I do in addition to what they're doing, because I think that that's important. Because you can show that this isn't just for like bullet journaling or anything like that. You can also use it for a more fine art application. And I think that makes the materials less intimidating for some people, because I think people sometimes just go, I'm not creative, like I wouldn't know where to start. And starting is just a matter of putting a line on a piece of paper and going for it. That's all I'm doing right now, right? Just drawing squares, putting lines in them. I know vaguely what I need those lines to do, but that's all this is. So yeah, what else is going on? Etsy show, staying at Cam's, hopefully finishing off this commission by the end of the weekend. There's this, and then there's 3 other pieces that go along with this, one of which is a tower that I've already drawn out. This guy, it's kind of cute. So that's going to be really cool. My beholder is in the way. Where's my page? There we go. And then, yeah, I've just about booked up for commission slots between here and Christmas, which is already blowing my mind. So going to be doing a lot of portraits of people's cats, which I'm super excited about. It's so cool to be able to give people pieces of their family memorialized in different ways. So stoked about that. I think that's going to be fun. A bunch of different maps. Somebody from the Netherlands has commissioned a map for me, which just makes, again, the world feel really small and the internet feel really cool. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, it's just, man, the world is looking up today. It's not that it hasn't been good lately, like things have been great lately, but just, oh, there's something so liberating about today. I'm stoked. I'm just so stoked, you guys. Alette, thank you. We can tweet it for sure. And yeah, thanks. I'll pass Kim on your best wishes because it's going to be at least 2 weeks that she needs to be off work. And they said potentially as long as 6, but we're hoping it's not going to be quite that long. I think Kim will start climbing the walls post surgery or not if it takes that long. I think we're just going to bounce more of the forest up here. Put a last bed in the corner. All right. So this is my druid's cabin. I think we're going to change the shape of that a little bit. Let's give him a front deck because that's cool. Let's give him a shed. I like that's a huge cabin actually. Let's maybe cut down that size a little bit because that's the size of like the tavern in town. I'm pretty sure a druid is not going to have a cabin that's the size of the tavern in town. I mean, maybe he would, potentially. I'm pretty sure he's got a really great garden though, so let's put a little bit of hedge going around the back here. I get to draw a picture of the inside of the cabin that the druid lives in. And the description that I got is just marvelous. It's talking about how it's all one room, kind of like Hagrid's hut. And there's a bed in the corner and a beautiful chair and a desk that they work at. And there's a window open and there's a squash plant with the blossoms kind of cascading through this wooden window frame. And I'm just obsessed with the idea of drawing these squash blossoms. I grew zucchini this year in my garden for the first time as a grown-up. I had it around as a kid. And the plant of a zucchini is just a riot. Like, the colors are great. The structure is really strange and kind of like a mythical forest when you look at it from down below. It's so cool. So yeah, I'm for some reason just really taken with the idea of doing these squash blossoms. There's my 03. Alright, so pencil I think is good, so we are going to get in here and start doing the ink. I'm going to start with just kind of my general lines, and what I want to do is the longest continual line to start with, which is going to be the edge of my forest here. And all that I'm looking to do is kind of create the rough kind of canopy of what a deciduous forest might look like on the edges. And it doesn't have to be too perfect. You don't want anything that's too regular, because a forest just doesn't work that way, right? So there's my first line, and then we have more forest going on down here. A few more trees down here. I just want to give a shout out to Myrna, who's monitoring the chat for me. It's sometimes a little bit difficult to like watch the chat and draw at the same time, because you kind of need your eyes on your paper. So she's amazing and is so supportive of this whole process for me. So yeah, just going in and adding a bit more of the height and the dimension for the canopy here. Just giving it some volume. So we know that there's a fairy forest going on up in this corner, so I realized that in the description that I got, the fairy forest is it's small, right? Because you're fairies, you're dealing with pixies and what have you, but I don't know how to represent that on the map without giving it a special district, because you wouldn't see it underneath the canopy of these trees otherwise. So because we know we need something for the adventurers to queue off of, I am going to create a clearing here, and that's just going to help give them an idea of where they need to go to on the map. It's interesting when you're working on a map system and you want to try to represent different scales, right? And that's a particularly interesting thing to work on when you're dealing with stuff in the fantasy genre, is how do you represent an area that's cohabitated by something as diverse as like a pixie and a human, because they're operating on completely different scales. And usually what you have to do is default to the larger scale. So in this case, it would be like humans, and there's selkies and all kinds of wonderful creatures here. And just like make allowances for the fact that it's not going to be to scale for the smaller scale. A good way to handle that sometimes is to do like a cutaway. So like for this area, I would create a separate box and give you a better idea of what that looks like. I'll have to run that by Scribe and just be like, hey, is that something that you want? I'm not sure. It wasn't in the original brief, but that doesn't mean anything. I mean, we're always open to revisions. It depends on how much time they're going to spend with the fairies, right? If it's not relevant to the adventure, then it's not necessary. But if it is, then it's probably a detail we might want to take care of. So yeah, just putting in some more trees here. And then once we have the general, I don't know what you call it, dimension, fluff of the trees that we're dealing with, I can go in and add more line weight, depending on what kind of line weight we want. So when I was working on Joshua's map, he had the chance to check out what was going on because I'd done some of the work on the live stream. And that was a process that he really seemed to appreciate, that he could watch it as it came into being, as it were. So I think I'll try to balance doing commission work out in the open like this, where people can actually watch the process of the pieces that they're commissioning. But I also want to do some of my own work on the live stream, just because I'll be doing different things than what gets commissioned frequently. So, hoping to anyway. I've got some illustrations that I've got burning in my head that I want to get done, and I've got a few that are paint, so I'm trying to figure out how to rig my setup for that. Looking for all the trees. Oh man, I probably sound silly singing so much, but I'm just so happy today. It's starting to look alright, hey? Alright, so I think the next step is to lay in the lines of my lake. I'm going to change pens for that. Not the one I want? Yeah, I think so. Alright, so same thing, just trying to create long pull lines. And then we have the island in the middle here. And we know from the description that this island is wooded. So we'll go back to the previous pen. Put some more trees on here. Alright, so going into town. Change pens again. And so again, we're going to start with what are the biggest things, which in this case are going to be the roads. One of the things that I'm doing down here is I've realized that some of my fields are just too big in proportion to what's going on in town and what the likely crop distribution is going to be. So I'm just making them smaller, keeping kind of a roadway in between them. It's probably not super critical to maintain that kind of realism for a map that is quite likely going to be mostly regarded by children, but it just helps to keep things visually interesting. So yeah, that's starting to look good. Right on. Right on, right on. So we know that the shape in the center of the town square is a hexagon. And I am definitely going to use a template to do that, just so that I get nice straight sides. That's the watchtower. Oh, I missed a tree. What pen did I use for that? Which is the little tower that I showed a little bit ago. So we know that that's there, and that's important. And then we have the docks. And then this is a market. And this is a shipyard for a boat builder. So we're just going to make sure there's some boats outside here that they're working on. And put some more detail into that in a minute. And this is the fishery. Put a bit of a fence around there. Right on. Right on, right on. We'll take that road into a bit of a courtyard there. Perfect. Let's put some crops in the ground. go. Alright, let's fill in those fields that are over here. Oh yeah, we need some walls in the park. So we should do that too. So what I wanted over here were just some round little fences almost. Kind of reinforce that this is the main meeting place in the city. With the watchtower in it. Okay. I think we're going to make this into a little pond. Somewhere for people to raise geese and ducks. So for these ones over here, I kind of want to imply that we've got a plant crop going on rather than just grain crop. So little shapes as opposed to just rows. These could even be like small fruit trees, depending on what kind of crops the village are the most interested in. That wasn't part of the briefing that I got, so I get to kind of imagine it for myself, which is fun. I know that it's a fishing village, so I'm going to assume that they're, if they're in the right climate, able to grow things that go well with fish. So maybe there's some lemon trees here. Probably some potato plants somewhere. And it's okay if these shapes aren't perfect, because plants are never fully symmetrical in the wild. The ones that are the closest to symmetrical, humans have had a heavy hand in shaping through years and years of selective breeding. So let's go back to the brush pen, start adding some more line weight here. So you can see as I'm going that it changes the weight of everything pretty significantly. It might look a little stark or heavy right now, but that will change when we start adding color. So for now, I'm just trying to keep all of the dark lines coming down because I'm assuming that my light source is to the top of my page, which would mean all of my shadows are going to come on the bottom side of things. And that will just help keep everything more unified with how it looks. It's really important to be intentional about your light sources. You don't have to have necessarily just one light source in a piece, although with maps it tends to make more sense to do it that way. But you do need to be consistent with your lighting. Know what you want to do because that'll help you know what you need to do to execute it properly, basically. If you're not paying attention to things like that, it can really throw off how an image reads for your audience, perception of volume and things like that. Now I'm just taking care of the trees that are in town so that they have the same kind of visual weight as the trees that are out. And that will help the viewer understand that these relatively shapeless blobs are intended to be trees. That's slightly more important when you're dealing with a map that's not going to have color cues to guide people. If you're using color, you can just keep things consistent with the color, and that will do a lot to suggest what it is that people are looking at. And now down here, I'm kind of breaking my rule a little bit with the heavier line to break it up, because there's a lot of detail down here. So instead of just keeping my light directed this way, I'm just trying to create a bit more line weight to differentiate that this is a solid thing that kind of supersedes everything that's going on in the background. And that helps a lot. All right. So I think we'll do a little bit more line weight on the lake here. Just going back through, kind of following my previous pen strokes for the shape, but also where I had lines that were thicker and thinner to kind of retain how natural that looks. Oh. So what I've done here is ended up with an error, which I can edit out in Facebook in Photoshop, or I can adapt the coastline to encompass it a bit more. And that will create a darker place, which I'm sure you've noticed is like where your eye instantly goes on the page. So that will have to be addressed with the use of color to kind of correct that if I don't choose to just edit it out in Photoshop to begin with. The other thing that you can do is just go and add more black to other areas in the drawing. So for example, let's go over here a little bit. Let's go over here a little bit. And that kind of starts to make that heavier black section look more natural, right? It looks less like it's a whoops and more like it belongs on the page. Let's do that a little bit more over here too. Alright. So I'm still kind of wishing we had a bit more black going on over here. Just to balance that out, because that's a sharp corner that's pretty heavy. So let's maybe cut it in just like that. There we go. And then let's maybe add a bit more over here. Yeah. Alright, now we're getting somewhere. So we're just about to the hour mark here. I'm pretty satisfied with how this is looking for now. Oh, we should probably put a little bit more line weight on the island, because that makes sense. And so I think from here what we'll do is I want to color in the border a heavier black because that'll help make this look more natural as well. But let's take off the pencil lines here before we go and just see what that looks like without the pencil undergrid. You can hear my Copics rattling, I bet. They're all hanging out in their cases waiting to get used. I anthropomorphize objects an awful lot. It is definitely a thing that I do. It's really important to make sure that you take off all of your pencil before you start working in Copic, because anytime that you go over a pencil line in Copic, it nails it down and you will not be able to erase it out again. So I have had a few too many pencil lines trapped in that regard. So I'm pretty particular about taking care of it now. And see, now once my pencil lines are out, I can see that there are places where my lining is not smooth. So I can go back in with a finer pen. I could even go back in with the brush pen and just clean that up. Make my lines nice and even. So I'll spend a couple minutes doing that. And then I think we'll be ready to move on to the color. This side in particular needs some love. Working in the sketchbook is a little bit difficult with the camera setup that I have going on because I can't rotate it quite the same amount as what I would be able to do if I wasn't trying to film. So I can understand why my pen marks would be the most awkward on this side of my page. But I mean, that's the great thing about sitting back and having a bit of a critical eye at your own work. You can make that decision of if it's working or it's not working. And it's important to do that at multiple points when you're on a piece, just to be like, yeah, is this going the way that feels good, that makes me happy with it? Because the happier I am with a piece, I find always that that's when my clients are the most satisfied too. And I mean, all artists are notoriously difficult to impress with their own work, right? It's just a truism of everything. Oh, and see, we totally missed doing the heavier line weight for these ones up here. So let's just put some of that in right now. Alright, I think we're going to call it for today. So, thanks for hanging out with me. I will be back next Thursday, probably broadcasting from a different table. And in the meantime, if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's monocledoctopus at Instagram. It's this Shea.Manweiler, SHEA.MANWEILER if you want to find me on Twitter. I'm also on Patreon as Monocled Octopus, and if you're interested in a commission or anything like that, send me a message, either through Twitter or Instagram or on Facebook, Monocled Octopus on Facebook as well, and I will be more than happy to talk to you about that. So this is what we're working on for now. I'll try to remember to get a picture of the puppy when we go to see him tonight so I can share him with you guys. and take care. Bye.